regarding but let's listen from what the president had to say, and also the deputy regarding the diaspora bonds and the house levy.
Tuko na housing fund ambayo tunataka kila Mkenya a contribute pesa kidogo, 3% of your income, 3% of your salary. Kama unapata shilingi 10,000, 3% ni shilingi 300 kila mwezi, uweke katika hiyo hazina. Pale mbele tutakusaidia vile utanunua nyumba. Kila mfanyikazi ambaye anaweka 3%, sheria itamlazimisha yule muajiri wake pia na yeye aweke 3%. Na sisi tutaanza kama serikali, all employees of government. Dawa ya kupunguza gharama ya maisha, kupunguza gharama ya chakula ni kwenda shambani, mbegu, mbolea, tulime, tuzalishe chakula. Hiyo ndio mpango. Hii ya sufuria kwa kichwa na maandamano haiwezi hata punguza chochote. I promise you.
The government wants to create an investment forum guaranteed by government for the people in diaspora. How you can invest back home in a safe manner and your savings are safe. We'll be mapping out credible real estate developers to work with the State Department of Diaspora Affairs that can build homes for people abroad, and the government will guarantee so that your money is safe, so that there is a framework within government that once you get some real estate developers to develop for you, the government will supervise and ensure that your investment is delivered. We need you to save at home. Other countries where we borrow money, they lend us money from savings from their countrymen. If you people agree with a good framework to save money at home, that is the money the government can borrow for development at an interest instead of going to China. We go to China because there is nowhere else we can borrow money. If we can develop a saving culture for our people in the diaspora, because your money is huge, and that's what I want to appeal to you. When the PS and our team works on that framework, please come in. We have a responsible government, and there is no responsible government that can let anybody lose your savings.
Clearly, the government is seeking every which way to get money, and remittances from the diaspora has been a big one, and right now is the diaspora bonds. Let's just chime in first of all on the house levy, because I think we have limited time, we can't really plumb deeper into it, and also now the diaspora bond. I think it's below. It's your turn. Let's just pick up with you.
The housing bond, the housing
housing levy and diaspora bond.
No, I don't support these levies. When I remember the former president Kenyatta also tried to introduce it, and we did not support it, because look, you cannot burden Kenyans with all these levies. You are raising the NSSF, you are raising NHIF, you are raising house levy again. Look, there is a limit. You have got taxes, you have got so many other things on people's income. I think housing is a private sector matter. Provide the appropriate business environment for private sector to invest in housing, and they will do that. No, you will not need to tell anyone to invest. All over the world, people will come and start building houses in Mandera, Nairobi, and Kisumu, and everywhere. And there are many ways government can do that, and they have done it in many other countries by addressing, particularly providing incentives around investment into housing, making cost of construction a bit more competitive, and more importantly, providing other ways in which you can benefit from the investment in terms of your taxes and so forth. That is the way to go, or to go to the simple way you have done in the previous regimes in the public-private partnerships. But I think this collecting money, I don't think levying Kenyans every time on everything that you want to do, levies, is not the right way to go in my view, and I don't think it's the best way. The second thing is on the issue of the Eurobond. For the government, it doesn't matter about whether you borrow from your own citizens or you borrow from other citizens of other countries. It's still the same. It's your borrowing. China and Japan are the world's largest credit nations. The peasants in China who are farming out there, the guys who are the lenders, through the bonds into the U.S. government. So it doesn't really matter whom we get the money from, whether it is our Kenyans working in the U.S. or in Botswana, but at the end of the day is that the government wants to borrow, and they're looking for every trick they can find to raise money.
Maybe
if Eurobond is not available,
the Kenyans, they'll give a better moratorium.
No, no. I mean, why would I lend to government at a lower rate when I can buy? No, I don't think so. In fact, our diaspora people expect better. They expect to get better terms
From
premium from us, from our government, because you want them to bring their money to Kenya, so you should be giving them more. So I think it's a good idea to try and work on the issue of diaspora trying to channel their resources into the country, not just through bonds, but I think through many other ways that we have discussed on this table many times. But the key thing is government, and there's a trust deficit in this country about giving government things, but borrowing is not a big deal. It's government guaranteed, government loans are sovereign loans, and I have no problem.
They were approaching the issue of Sukuk bond. Sukuk bonds, when you're coming to Islamic, of course, banking as well, interest rate is more. There's no interest, but I know there are other mechanisms on how also they can actually gain. Is that an option that we can actually look forward to? We go for the Sukuk bond?
I think they looked at it and they want to review that again. From what I hear, they want to get back again to the same, because they're looking at every possible way in which they can, Sukuk
Maybe
bonds,
they had forgotten about
bonds.
Sukuk bond.
Yeah.
They can't forget. Right now, they're looking everywhere. I'm surprised I've not really talked about Sukuk bond. Look, talking about listening, the housing levy is not the first time that we've been talking about the housing levy. And we suspect the reason also of the PS Hinga is still left there is because of his house levy. The administration knew maybe we'll latch back into it. But there was protestations against it, even from the beginning. Right now we have the public servants who are really protesting. The teachers have said they will not really buy the housing levy, as it were. Is the government listening? Did the government listen then?
Houses should be addressed through SACCOs and other things. I mean, really,
it's not really the business of government.
Are you talking to me now? Okay.
I was looking. Anyone of you actually can speak.
Then I'll come in.
I just want
the government doesn't want to speak now.
I just want to put a small thing on the table.
Yes.
There is somebody investing in student housing, big in this town.
Yeah.
Kwetu.
Yeah. And a student, how much is a student earning? And this person is able to make a whole business out of housing students. Somebody who actually, a lot of the affordable housing are for people who are working and probably earning more. So why should you be levying when you can actually create the right environment for somebody to put affordable housing in this country?
Correct.
That is the question that I have. Point 2, there are already a lot of statutory levies that we're paying. NSSF is a big one. And if you remember NSSF in the old days when people were extracting money from NSSF, it was through housing and trying to create housing. If you close those loopholes, and I believe they're now closed, they're not, what was it? The Drummond, whatever it is, those companies that were benefiting from NSSF and taking money out and then going under. Yeah? NSSF now can build
or something,
a big pot of money. If you look at one of the biggest people investing in South Africa, it's the pension scheme in South Africa. That's the one that is investing. And they're even putting money into Kenya. The pension fund in South Africa has got people who have been given that pension money to come and invest in Kenya to get a return. So the one unit that everybody in the world uses is pension funds to create a pot for investment. You do not need all these other levies.
And it's huge in this
right?
country, our pension funds.
And if you look at NSSF and then you put all the private sector pension funds together,
It's huge.
that's a big amount of money. But you've got to have the right trusted framework to extract that money out and begin to use it into this economy. And I believe that that is what we should focus on, is to create that framework, a trusted framework that can extract that money out and begin to use it to develop this country. Whether it is housing, whether it is whatever it is, the money that is sitting in the pension funds, which we are pushing into a pot that is limited. When you look at the Retirement Benefits Act and all the various buckets that people can
You
go
should
into.
mention the amount.
Yeah.
Our pension fund is almost about 15 billion now.
Dollars.
Dollars.
Yeah,
Yes, it's huge.
So when you look at
incentives
how,
and they'll invest.
where the restrictions are as to where they can put and all the rest of it, we need to be creative
And
in that
SACCOs,
area.
and SACCOs also
And
trillions,
SACCOs, we haven't put
hundreds
that.
of trillions.
All those things.
Yeah.
If you put all that money together,
The money is there.
there is a lot of money that can be used to invest and
Then
bring this
unclaimed
country.
assets as well.
Yeah. And not only in housing, but you're talking about the health services, water, and everything else. If the framework is right and there is trust in that framework, this country does not need to borrow from anybody. It needs to just tap into
Thank
the
you.
money that is sitting in this country.
We need to wind up. I can see the sun is upon us, so we are standing up here.
Personally, I have no difficulty. I know there are issues around taxing today rather than tomorrow. Even if it's savings, forcing the savings now for consumers today, they would say, I would rather use the money now than be forced to save because I'll use it in old age. There are those questions. And if the economy is not well managed and the currency completely collapses like the Zimbabwean did, then those savings in the future will be worth quite little. But if it is well managed, that's what most countries are doing. Take countries like the US. The US, other than pension funds, which are very significant, and they are not only in government, they are also in the private sector, the 401k funds, they don't know, all manner of ways in which that money is saved. And people are living longer in Kenya than before. So we're going to get to a situation in which we need that money ever more than we did as a generation and the future generation. I think the challenge is that when people are pushed on the wall, anything you do, even if it's good for them, anything you do, you say, don't spend this for some today, you'll do so tomorrow. And the person is saying, but then I will not have dinner. If you're down, if you're pushed that much, then anything, even if it seems good in the aggregate, is painful individually. But it's not an unusual thing. And in fact, pension funds are used a lot in construction of infrastructure, housing included, and so on. So
Thank you.
I think that is something that we could do.
Yeah, and the reason
with our closing statements as well. So
okay, the reason the levy is a poor idea, in the aggregate, is actually a very poor idea. First of all, as you yourself agree, a better policy is to support pension funds and other long-term assets. I mean, financial flows like that to support investment in housing which are long-term. So Kenyans are right to say, look, that's a bit too much and there are too many levies. What government ought to be doing is removing the roadblocks that make it harder for the provision of low-cost housing. On the Euro bondage question and whether, as Cook bond or a diaspora bond and so on, look, you call it what you want. The basic issue is that government is living beyond its means. The budget deficit is big and keeps growing bigger. This government that came on board on the promise of doing something different is actually increasing the budget deficit. You will notice in the budget policy statement, their intention is to have a budget of 6.7 nearly trillion. Not 6, 3.6 trillion. Now, if you're having difficulties financing what you found on the table, which was around 3.2, no, it hasn't. How do you expect to finance the additional 500 billion? That is what the problem is. Also, the economy runs on confidence. You must find a way to rebuild the investor confidence, business confidence, consumer confidence.
Thank you.
And not by telling us you're postponing the problem by 2 years.
Right. I think we need to wind up on that without even getting your closing remarks, because I think the sun is smarting your eyes. I can see